Hello viewer, the Nameless Scholar here. With the recent growth of my channel, I have written the script for this video for a third time now. Which sure, most came for the Trench Crusade hate, but that's not even my best video. This is so far the best video I have ever made, even though I did make some minor mistakes. As I said before, this is a third draft for this video, because at first, I wrote the script with the intention of updating the 15 to 30 people who consistently watch me. That number now went up. I don't know by how much, but it went up. Hence why the topics I will be talking about in this video will be rather loosely connected, so forgive me for the guerrilla-style commentary. Keep in mind, this is the most coherent version so far. I had to cut out a chunk of the previous script to make it as coherent as it is now. So I want to start off by giving an update to a recent video I did. Well, it turns out that it was even worse than I thought. They aren't just trying to make you forget everything before 8th edition. They are trying to make you forget everything before 10th. If you want the details, check out this video by Nellop. Because originally, I didn't even start the video the way I just did. So, let me get something out of the way in case anyone is still here within the minute mark. Here goes. I am not for female custodies because I'm an incel chud who hates women, and I think GW has been infiltrated by Marxists who will bring about the end of Western civilization by putting women in wargaming. Because I ultimately hate boobies. Okay, now I'm going to give you the time to tell me how much of an istaphobe I am down in the comments. You have time. I already said what I wanted to say about it before in this video, and I honestly don't want to repeat myself except for saying English, that here's your answer to anyone who says the lore always changed. Because the point of this video is not female custodies, because it has been covered to death and then some already. Better than I ever could. If you want a particularly good video on this, the video where I got this chart from by the Outer Circle does a pretty good job of this. So if you want to call me a chud down in the comments, go ahead. Even though none of your buzzwords could even apply to me. I'm not American, let alone from anywhere you could classify as Western civilization, quote unquote. English isn't even my native tongue, for crying out loud. I'm just good at hiding it. It's why I stumble so much in my videos. For a while, I have noticed that people who are dissatisfied with 40k have been trying to find things to replace it. Some have accepted other settings in war games for what they are, but many others seem to be completely uninterested in them. Well, why is that? 40k fans cannot really let go of 40k, is the argument I'm trying to make, and I'm here to try to explore why. Now, I love Warhammer 40k. And I will always love Warhammer 40k. It's that I have seen that I have to find greener pastures, whereas many others are stuck in what is essentially an abusive relationship. Now, I am not talking about not buying the models, voting with your wallet, and not giving GW money and instead going the route of 3D printing, which that doesn't really work, but that isn't the point. Hint, hint. The point is that I have noticed that many people are trying to find an exact substitute for Warhammer 40k, particularly the Warhammer 40k as most people know it, 2nd through 7th editions, where humanity is raging against the dying of the light with cool super soldiers in power armor. But here's the thing, there will never ever be another Warhammer 40k like that. Even if it's cliche to say this, but it applies. At this point, don't be sad that it's gone. Be happy that it even happened. The Warhammer 40k you knew and loved died in 2017. Not just that, before I move on to other settings, it's not just 40k that's suffering. The pastures are not green in GW's other settings as well. GW's IPs have been cannibalizing themselves in both game and lore. I really don't have to explain to you what happened with the Horus Heresy 3.0, because the horse isn't just dead, it rapidly ceased to exist. The only thing I will say is that Horus Heresy is once again GW using the boiling frog effect to condition people into accepting that it is Firstborn the game. And sooner or later, Horus Heresy is just going to become Warhammer 40k Old World Boogaloo. Maybe GW will do something good for once and retcon the War of the Beast into something better by rewriting it, but that's expecting too much with Games Workshop. Firstly, hope is the first step on the road to disappointment. Secondly, GW always has a catch that will actively screw over its customer base. Warhammer the Old World? In 2027, so next year, GW is going to bring a new edition anyways. I mean, at this point, it's a given. Speaking of, this section, brief side tangent and update for people who consistently watch my awful videos. When I made my video on Trench Crusade, I spent like the second half of it trash-talking Warhammer the Old World. I will have to say that I've been too harsh on it. It succeeded more than anyone else expected. It's that I still wouldn't call it the most popular or best-selling GW game, especially the latter. The Old World came out in 2024, and most of their profit from that year was from 40k, even before Space Marine 2 was released. That, and I still don't find the Old World to be a worthy successor to the original Warhammer Fantasy Battle. Age of Sigmar? It has been turned into 10th edition light. Just like the first edition, it is very bare bones. Nobody, literally nobody, asked for a new edition. The only thing of note that it did, aside from Thanosing the Stormcast Eternals range, was that it brought back the Anvil of Apotheosis from 2nd edition. Which, while I'm on this topic, I want you to hear me out about Age of Sigmar. I consider Age of Sigmar to be a victim as much as Warhammer Fantasy Battle itself. Not only did Age of Sigmar replace Warhammer Fantasy, sure, it became its own thing, which is Grimdark High Fantasy. Whereas Warhammer Fantasy was a melting pot of multiple types of fantasy under a Grimdark lens. Now, if we accept Age of Sigmar as only Grimdark High Fantasy, is that the reason why Age of Sigmar is a victim is also its greatest weakness, the 3-year cycle. The reason why, compared to Warhammer Fantasy lore, Age of Sigmar lore is banal is because it is not given an opportunity to grow. 2nd edition being released within 3 years was necessary as it established Age of Sigmar's own identity and retconned a lot of the terrible parts of the established lore that came from 1st edition. However, it was not even given an opportunity to grow enough to be deeper to establish the lore of its named characters, that do not originate from Warhammer Fantasy Battle itself at least. The cultures were barely established, and the maps of the Mortal Realms changed too quickly. So the greatest weakness of Age of Sigmar is that it is not given the chance to grow organically. It would be like if Gordon Ramsay had to make the best dish he can within 30 minutes in a dirty kitchen, and he has to clean the kitchen while he cooks within those 30 minutes. Now, I've mentioned in my previous video that Games Workshop's quote-unquote competition is too weak and or incompetent to actually topple Games Workshop from its throne. It's okay to like those alternatives, even if it is Trench Crusade for some ungodly reason. To add insult to injury, Games Workshop is too big to fail. So, what to do then? If there isn't any hope with other settings and war games, do we just do nothing? Well, first off, I will be watching with interest the upcoming StarCraft war game. Although I am not saying it's a guarantee, it is looking good with this one so far. I'm actually excited for it, and all I can do is hope and pray that even if it cannot truly compete with Games Workshop, it will be successful.
Hell, it's about time.
I share the same sentiment with Infinity and to a certain degree, Bolt Action, Conflict 47, and Conquest. It's that I wish that Parabellum wasn't as greedy as Games Workshop is. Now, if you're still too rigid to find something that's not 40k and just stubbornly refuse to experience anything too new, and you just want your power armor and super soldiers, just watch Space King. Even though Space King is more of a parody of Rogue Trader through 2nd edition of 40k than anything else, where the lore was much vackier English, and not even necessarily in the satirical sense. I mean, It beats watching text-to-speech. Or worse, Hunter the Parenting. This is the section where I will tell you, the viewer, who is not happy with 40k, whether it's the Fem Stories debacle, culture wars, content creators at each other's throats, how nothing ever happens in the new lore, blah blah blah, then here's what you need to do. It is something that you have heard of for a while. Create your own setting. At this point, it's not just something to tell you to go away, but a responsibility. If you really are that bothered like I am, do something productive. Anything. Even if you never wrote, just write. Even if no one reads it. Because if you do not take action, you're just being apathetic. They win because they take action, and all you do is complain. If you really care so much, you will take your action and do your own thing, because there is no other action to take. Aside from being a cynic and whining about lore, I also work on my own stuff. It's that unlike other people, I'm poor, so I can't commission people. It's a one-man project, because I would much rather do that and prepare for the future than just complain and complain alone. Because only complaining, pretending that I am being righteous by boycotting Games Workshop and Total is apathy. And
apathy is death.
If you really have to, do what Games Workshop did to Tolkien, Moorcock, Herbert, and Heinlein to Games Workshop themselves, and ask yourselves the question, how much can I rip off from Games Workshop and legally get away with it? I mean, that's what Blizzard did with Warcraft and StarCraft. With the former, it is rumored that Blizzard wanted to make a Warhammer Fantasy Battle strategy game, but they couldn't get the license, and that turned into Warcraft Orcs and Humans, which then became its own thing entirely. With StarCraft, well, it's also the same deal. It's that the Terrans are anything but the Imperium. StarCraft is the American South meets Australia. The Zerg being their equivalent of the Tyranids, and the Protoss being, let's be honest, Eldar, but better in every way. StarCraft is essentially the galaxy sector down under. So if you're really going to do that, be sure to do it in the same way Blizzard did. Because decades later, with Gravis Armor and the Leagues of Votann, Games Workshop started ripping off Blizzard, whom ripped them off first. Neither can sue the other because it's mutually assured destruction. I'm just spitballing ideas here. English. Just to be sure to create something on your own at this point. Because the pastures aren't green not just in 40k, but in GW's other IPs, and to a degree other tabletop war games. But that's partially because Games Workshop is the tabletop wargaming market. It's why they never advertise. By the time you can start your own setting, whether it's a new war game, or an RPG module, a book series, or whatever, Games Workshop would likely stop being a tabletop game, premium miniatures company, and finally become a media conglomerate as an Amazon subsidiary. And at that point, the hobby side will be an afterthought. The only way the alternatives to 40k will flourish is when GW fully leaves the tabletop wargaming market. You have time until then. Well, anyways guys, this is going to be it for this video. I am the Nameless Scholar, and do not forget,
apathy is death.